Okay, gang. For those of us who are logging on right now, if you guys can throw in where you are from. Oh my gosh, we got someone from Southeast. Ottawa, Montreal, North Carolina, Florida, Spain, New York, Toronto, Chicago, LA, Virginia. We've got Maine, more from Toronto, more from Calgary, South Africa. Heck yeah, Nova Scotia,
What?
Arizona. Oh man, yes, this is like the best part right now. New Orleans, Milwaukee, Vancouver, New Jersey. Amazing. Keep coming in, keep throwing in. Tell us where you're from, where are you calling in from. We're excited to hear you. We've got Alberta. This is a great all sorts of places. We've got Florida, Los Angeles, more North Carolina, more from Texas. Let's see. We've got Massachusetts, more from Spain, another one from Montreal. We've got all sorts of folks coming in. Kansas, Alabama. Love it. Love it. Please tell us where you're from. We're so excited you're here. We're going to get started in a couple minutes, but while we're in, this is amazing. It is great to see it. Tim's already starting some of our visual communication, drawing where people are from. We've got Hawaii. There we go.
Oh man,
I
kind
know.
of over here, right? I
um,
thought I had most of the world. Great.
it's right over there. It's in the bottom right corner. I can see it there. It's kind of popping over. There we go. We've got people from all over. If you guys have questions right now, if there's any kind of technical things, Jeff and Pete are in the chat. You can go ahead and chat them individually. They can help you with any technical questions as we get going. I will be recording this. It's actually already recorded right now. New Brunswick. We've got some from Waterloo, San Diego, LA. This is amazing, Minneapolis. You guys keep throwing in. For those who are joining us right now, if you can, throw in the chat where you're from, Florida, Ohio. We've got people everywhere, which is so great to see. We're going to be doing a couple things. Seattle, love it, love it. Lived there for 10 years, big fan of that city. Puerto Rico, fantastic. Keep throwing it in. We will be recording this webinar today, guys. So if that's one of your questions, just so you know, there will be a recording. We are going to be doing a giveaway. So for those who are participating in the Q&As, if you guys enter questions throughout the presentation, that will get you entered to win what we're giving away today, which is exciting. There's lots of fun things happening. We will be using the chat a ton, so please open it up. Make sure you throw in where you're from. We are just stoked to have people from all over the world here today. It's going to be a great global presentation. There's a couple hundred people on, which is awesome. So guys, this is going to be really, really exciting. There are teams from Wacom in the chat as well. So if you've got questions along the way, we're here to support you. Tim and I will do our best to answer questions as they come in throughout the webinar. So we're going to let people keep joining. We are at the hour. So Tim, I think we can kind of get started if you're ready. Ready? Okay.
I'm ready. Can you hear me? Are we
I
good?
can.
Yeah,
We're good.
I think
I can hear
so.
you.
All right.
Guys, I'm going to launch a poll for those who are here. It's going to right now talk about and ask how many people have used a pen tablet for presentation. Someone from Portland, hey, that's where I'm based out of and Tim's based out of. That's awesome, guys. Glad some local folks are here. So enter the poll if you get a moment. We're going to keep it open for just a minute while I talk through some housekeeping things, and then we're going to get started. So today's webinar, we are so excited to have Tim May here to do visual communication with us. Throughout the webinar, as you guys see, we are going to have visual aids taken throughout the entire thing. Yes, this is recorded. This will be sent out to you 2 days after our webinar with all of these recordings, all of these notes. Tim has also been amazing in working with our team. There will also be a tips and tricks sheet coming out 2 days afterwards. And not only will the winner of our giveaway be announced in that email, but we'll also have some special promotions for you for Wacom product, as well as you learn why you might want to do some visual communication. So that'll be happening. It looks like we've got our poll. I'm going to go ahead and close it down. So 30% of you have participated in visual communication before, but 70%, Tim, brand new. brand new to this with us. So we get to blow some minds today around the power of this. You
Awesome.
ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So Tim's going to throw out our giveaway here. If you enter a question into the question field Q&A section today, so chat's where we're going to be talking to you throughout the entire thing. But in the Q&A section is where we are going to have the entry. So ask us a question, anything around visual communication, anything about storytelling, anything about Wacom, and we will answer. So we are ready to go. And then Tim, do you want to share a little bit of your favorite quote and why we're here?
Yes, yes. So this is a quote from Malcolm Gladwell, and he's talking here about like humans and how we see and perceive things. And the quote here: "Human beings are a sight species. Sight is our superpower. The biggest web of sensory connections in our brains is between our cortex and our eyes." And he's comparing us in this particular quote to dogs. Dogs, they put all of their evolutionary like weight behind the nose, right? A dog can smell things that a human could even imagine smelling, right? They've got a symphony of nasal enjoyment. And but for us, it's all in our eyes. And you look at the tools we use, right? Why do we look at data and readouts? That's because our eyes need to take that information in. And so as we look at sort of like the background of why visuals work so well and why we can get better at them, it's because the better we get at them, we already have this like pre-built ability to just suction in everything through our eyeballs, and that's how we get most of our information about the world. Pictures worth 1,000 words in the chat. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, definitely. And so, guys, I have the privilege of introducing Tim here. So, for those who are new, I'm Lindsay Reynolds. I'm the Director of Enterprise Business with Wacom, and we get to host some amazing webinar series with amazing people. And Tim is one of those. So, Tim, I'm going to give a little bit of your background, a little bit of why you're the one who's talking to us today. So, Tim's a creative director at Explain, which is design consultancy and agency here in Portland. Basically, you work with organizations globally around improving the focus on visual communication, visual thinking, and really having a human-centered design. You've been doing this for 22 years, which is, I think, very impressive. I won't make a joke about that. I haven't been in the industry that long. But, but 22 years is a really long time, right? You've been using digital art and communication skills to really help accelerate people's ability to drive change in organizations, understanding that improve people's work life and that there's just heart to it, right? And I know that you really have a passion for helping others. We get to work with you a lot, whether it's with nonprofits, with education organizations, with folks today. It's just always such an honor to get to work with you. And just kind of a little bit of your your creds, right? So you went to school, graduate school at the University of Utah, and then you studied painting at the University of Bonn in Germany. So you've got a little bit of dual experience here, right?
Yeah, I kind of thought I'd be a studio artist, but what I found was that is, and hats off to everyone who can do that. That's amazing. It's very isolating, and I felt that like where my career went, I really like the social side of art and design and how we can instead of just working in my studio all the time and then showing off once every 2 or 3 months. Using it as a means of collaboration really was where I felt like I kind of kicked off my career and got me pointed in a direction.
And I think it's amazing too. I've seen some of the work you've done and how you make this so easy, right? Which makes it seem really easy. And guys, you'll be able to do these kind of things at the end. And I know, Tim, we've got a pretty good agenda for the next 45 minutes or so of content. So
we're packed.
So let's go through this really quick, everyone, so you know what we're going to be doing. We're going to talk a little bit about who the Wacom. We've already done that. Here we introduced us, who we are. We're going to talk to you guys about what is visual communication, right? So you know what that is, what we're doing. We're going to talk about the 3 ways to reimagine it, which are some of the takeaways that you'll be able to take right away home. We're going to do how to become an effective visual communicator, which simple tips and tricks, right? You guys are going to love this already. It's going to be fantastic. And again, we're recording this presentation. So as we go through and there's things you want to revisit or relearn or practice with us, do. If you want to try it right now to practice with us, do. Like, please feel free to draw along with us. We'll talk about the level 1, level 2, and level 3 of what visual communication is. Now, Tim's doing a series with us. This is really the first part of that series. So he will be back to do a 200 level course on visual communication. So please keep an eye out for that as well. So you guys, we'll get there. Then we'll go over a little bit of what this means and how to start today. We'll talk about the tools you need, the hardware you need, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So please ask questions along the way. We will try to answer them. It'll enter you for the giveaway. We have a lot of really cool things to cover with you. If you miss anything or you're like, hey, can you guys go back? Again, it's recorded and we're going to have another time with Tim May. And then also we'll share contact information. So, Tim, what is visual communication?
Yeah, really, really good question. I think the simplest way to like describe visual communication as a topic is to think of it as shifting our communication style from word heavy communication to picture heavy communication. The very sort of the highest level, it's moving from fewer words, more pictures, and combining the pictures with the words in a way that's going to help bring people together. I think everyone's seen people in a meeting fighting over words, right? Everyone's been in that meeting, right? It's like, it's not that word, it's this word.
Yeah.
And one of the like early century gurus of visual thinking, Otto Neurath, his quote is, words divide, pictures unite. And that you don't often see people at blows with each other about a bad drawing. A bad drawing is a wonderful tool to bring people together.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's true, right? One of the things we've learned is now we're not together anymore, right? Like in space, we're doing this remote, everything like that. And I think that is the visual communication is we don't have time to fight over a word. We just need to tell the story and move quickly.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And I apologize. It sounds like my microphone is maybe suboptimal, but hopefully you can still hear me. It just might be a little blown out, or maybe I'm just speaking too loudly, but you can still hear me okay.
That's an exciting topic, right? That's the hard part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, so in kind of building on these ideas of visual communication, we as humans are hardwired for visual input. There's if you want to like look up the picture superiority effect, the basic premise of this concept is we remember words and pictures much longer. We remember pictures much longer than we remember words. This one of the elements of this is what we call the dual coding theory, where as we take visual input, right, and then combine that with verbal input, it basically increases our recall, and kind of ties those two ideas together in our brain. So as opposed to just verbal, oftentimes our recall is about 10%. It can be upped by as much as 70% for being able to combine that idea with an image and lock those into our brain at the same time. So that's like one of the elements of just, and you know, look it up on Wikipedia. I don't want to necessarily get into the details of it, but I feel like that this is one of these like there's a ton of evidence, and evidence keeps coming out about just how effective visuals are and how our brains just love bringing them in, right, and making that's one kind of funny aside. So one of the Jeopardy contestants was talking about how they learn all the things they need to know to be able to answer all the Jeopardy questions. And what they're actually doing is creating visual pictures in their heads to help them memorize everything, right? Yep. And so they sort of build these elaborate images to help them go deep on a topic. And so instead of having to recall all the words in a dictionary. They're just coming back to a single image that allows them to kind of understand what they need to know about that topic, which I think is an interesting thought. Whenever I have to do like a really prepared speech, I create sort of a really funny, um, like visual hieroglyphics
Yeah.
that are my notes that are going to help me memorize what I need to be able to say, because I am so visually wired that's the way that I'll often put the ideas together. It's like I kind of know that, that I'll draw little pictures of myself, right? It's like, all right, so I'm talking about myself here, and then I need to remember this message that's going on, and then after that message, I'm going to be saying, A, B, and C, but it's a kind of funny shorthand that I use to be able to put that together. There were some questions about what we're using. So I am using a brush in Adobe Illustrator to be able to share what we're doing. So as we move along, this is a canvas. I've set some canvases up. So my pre-drawings and everything that you're seeing are Adobe Illustrator. And this is just one of the standard brushes in Adobe Illustrator. I'm not doing anything custom as far as like, I don't have any like extra outside
Yeah.
software beyond that, but we'll get more into the setup later.
For sure. And you do have a great brush style, right? It's very you, right? And I think that's one of the things you'll talk about a little bit too, is like the personality, right? Some of your shorthand and kind of your way, right? And it's picking a brush, right? That's one of the things too. And I think too, the visual thinking, if you think about like how we learn things as kids, right? It's a picture associated with whatever the word is, right? So we learn visually as very small kids, and it helps us remember very quickly, and become attached to something very fast.
Yeah, I think that one of the things we're often telling our students when we're teaching courses in this is find your inner 4-year-old. Anytime you've seen a 4-year-old, what do they enjoy most? Just digging into that box of crayons and going to town, right? And they don't color in the lines. They're just, but it's a method of exploring the world. And at some point that gets kind of beaten out of us, right? That it's like, oh no, now you need to work on your reading, your writing, your arithmetic, and colors. Like coloring with crayons is sort of declined out as a less important skill set, right? That people are like, well, you're never going to do anything with drawing as you move forward. And I kind of like one of my like core beliefs is that that drawing can actually be a method of communication, and to a point where for me it's kind of interchangeable with writing. That if I'm ever working with a bunch of people, I need to have some means of being able to share drawings with them, because otherwise we're not going to understand each other.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, and I think too, it goes back to the days of like, well, let's just go to the whiteboard, right? Like that's
Yeah.
so often we were like, let's just go to the whiteboard. Like let's draw it out as we talk about a concept or a plan or anything. It's just like we just need to turn and go to the whiteboard. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So why is this important now? That's a good question. So I think one of the things that we find in this meeting as well, as we're having fun debates about the audio quality of our presentation and whatnot, I feel like when we're meeting virtually and you have to meet with this person who's all the way over here and you're trying to make a connection with them, I think that Zoom does a lot. It gets us there. But boy, is it hard to stay engaged over Zoom. I'm sure some of you have already checked your email and there's like your social feeds. Like, it's just hard to stay focused. I'm not judging. This is how we all are. This is just how humans are wired, right? It's hard to keep your focus. But when somebody is drawing lines and talking about, like, we had all of our great, Canadian participants here. So I'll do a little, hey, here's our Canadian flag. Okay, I've just talked to you directly and drawn something about your place here. I think that we're as we start to sort of see somebody drawing lines, it brings engagement back, right? That there's sort of a natural connection to our hands. And so in this hybrid virtual world where it's so important that we're able to collaborate, and yet collaboration and culture is really hard to translate. I feel like drawing is one of those things that kind of just brings us back to earth, right? Sort of, our shoes are on the ground, and we kind of know, like, hey, we're grounded. We can see somebody drawing, and it feels a little more organic, right? That as you see somebody drawing in real time, you're like, oh, that kind of feels natural to me. And even though I'm using digital tools, it kind of brings us a little closer together.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I think that there are lots of other reasons we can get into why now it's particularly important. But I just think – living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a hybrid world, to kind of summarize my ramble, living in a h we need to be able to better communicate visually, because these visual communication tools that are available to us can really help us accelerate our alignment.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it also like if you're thinking you're explaining a really complex concept or a really simple concept, when you're drawing, it makes it so everybody's kind of on the same ground, right? It neutralizes it a little bit too. And then also, if you're not very good at drawing and you really understand a really complex concept, but you're trying to draw it out and you're not great at it, it makes those around you not feel bad that they're not as good at understanding the concept because you're like, well, she's not very good at drawing at it. She might get it, but now you've got to break it down, right? And it just makes it so that the understanding's there, right? And it just slows the process down a little bit too, so people can kind of talk in a way that is not so hard, right? It does. It simplifies complexity
Yeah,
and humanizes us a little bit too when you watch us draw, right? At
yeah,
least I always feel like I'm humanized and I'm like, watch my not so square box and my like oblong circle and
yeah,
my
yeah.
arrow.
In fact, my
Yeah,
company Explains founder Dave Gray was in high school when he thought he understood something, but he wasn't sure. So he drew a picture of it to show it to his teacher. His teacher looked at the drawing and said, "Oh, you're actually wrong. Here's what it's supposed to look like." But what that taught him was really important and kind of the foundation of the company I work for, which is the visual artifact facilitated a level of understanding that he couldn't reach verbally or any other way.
yep.
So I think that that's kind of an important point as we talk about it. All right. So 3 ways to reimagine your communication. So next thing we're going to talk about is like, all right. So we went into like what's so great, why is it important now? Now we're going to get a little more tactical
Yeah.
about like here are some things that we think are kind of critical as far as like rethinking how we do this. All right. And I think a lot of people have thought of this, but I think that the point of this about collaborating asynchronously, but the point here is also and visually, right? That if we have a something that we're working on, and that I'm sure we've all found this now, that like half of our team has decided to move back into the woods somewhere because why not?
Yeah.
That's the world we're in now. And so as we think about like working asynchronously, now we have this opportunity to be able to put things in a visual way and say, hey, here's this thing that I've got. And one of the things that my organization is doing a lot now is generating smart virtual whiteboards. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that the ability to say, hey, here's this thing that I'm working on, and you immediately see where it's at. In the sense that you kind of get the visual of where we are in our process. So anyway, that's one thing that like in sort of, oh, and I wrote visibly, not visually. Let's put the U in there so that we're not. I think your ability to spell when you're working in real time goes down.
It
Um,
does. But you're drawing, but at the same time, no one's paying attention, right? Because you're drawing. So it's also a great cover if you're like, I'm not a great speller, but I can draw well. Like that visual communication can cover you right there too.
Right, right, and that like my team, like I'm sure a lot of teams, part of Explain is in Spain, and we get so much value from the time warp, right? That I can do something at the end of my day, and then by the time I come back, they've had 7 or 8 hours to kind of chew on that and move it forward, and so that by the time I open that project again, we've seen that kind of asynchronous collaboration, and even though the timeline, we meet up for a half hour, that meetup is really valuable because now I'm able to kind of move things better, and see what it looks like. The next point, and this is a hard one for a lot of us, is break out of the PowerPoint box.
Yeah, right? That's a huge
um,
one. It's huge.
it's huge, because and there are a few reasons that I think I use presentations. We all have to have presentations at certain times. Like in some cases, the presentation is what you need in order to get through your content, and that's fine. But I think some of the limitations of PowerPoint often dictate how we create our work, and so what I mean by that is, PowerPoint is going to tell you the minute you open a project, right? You're going to have a big ass title, right? That is like the big thing that's super big, and your page is pre-programmed to have that massive title on the top of your page. And then it's going to tell you you're going to put some bullet points here, and you're going to have an image right here. One of the things that does is locks you into a format for your presentation that doesn't necessarily relate to what you're trying to convey, right? You're already tailoring your content to that box. And so one of the things that I recommend is think about how your template is set up in PowerPoint and break it. Your thing is, you know, the giant title may not be the most important part of your slide. So think about what's most important, and probably the most important part of your slide is are those bullet points. So what if you made those the biggest thing on the page, and what if they didn't need to be organized as bullet points? So just and one of the things that I've seen and that you're hopefully witnessing right now is we're using a very non-traditional format to be able to share what we're talking about. And I think that by using this, there's like hopefully a different level of engagement, right? That as you see what we're doing, this is sort of a one-to-many type of a broadcast type of format that we're
Yeah.
doing. But at the same time, I think that this is a valuable tool in sort of being able to get people to engage and break in. I was drawing a lotus flower. So I don't know what that was. That was a fail. We'll get rid of that one.
But that's okay. I mean, that's part of it too. When you're visually communicating, you're just engaging folks to watch, right? So when you're breaking out of your PowerPoint box, right,
Right.
you have them moving all over the screen. So now they're following along wherever you're drawing. So you don't have to be in that format to guide the conversation because they're following where your pen is. So now you can use the whole space and actually, like, I don't want to say dance, right? I'm thinking like a square dance, right? Where you use all four corners. I don't know if anybody else on here had to do square dancing in high school, but like when you do square dancing in high school, it's not just a square thing. You're moving at all four corners, right? And this visual communication is that same kind of thing. You're moving and using all four corners of the space and using it in a different way, which I think is awesome. And it's
Yeah.
hard to break out of the PowerPoint box. I know some of you guys are talking about in the chat. I started doing PowerPoint in second grade, right? I know that sounds crazy, but like that's when I started doing PowerPoint presentations was in second grade. And that's how we were taught to line out your thinking is this like bullet points and title. And now, like, as you're showing us, it is content is king. It's no
Yeah.
longer about a really, I don't want to say sterile, that's not the right word, like, homogenized template. It's about what is the message you're trying to get.
Right, right.
That's
And
awesome.
I think there are some interesting discussions in the chat also around Canva and other really good tools that are really valuable in kind of moving forward in our presentation. The next thing that I think is really valuable is turn the pen on.
Woohoo!
So um, if you are using a presentation, I do this all the time. If you need to use any kind of presentation, just by having the pen active, one of the things you're doing is, like we said before, that level of engagement where now all of a sudden the eyeballs are kind of drawn to wherever your pen is making marks. And we'll use that in almost every facet of shared digital whiteboards, of presentations. Even in Zoom itself has a drawing feature that you can use to draw on top of your presentation. There's the annotate feature. I just recommend anyone, the tablets that are available are not expensive at this point. Like the on ramp is much easier than it once was. I think that I started using a Wacom tablet in the 90s when you were four. So I've been doing it for a very long time. Those early tablets were a little clunky. Like there was a longer learning curve. But
Yeah.
one of the things that's kind of funny is I've got one of these tablets that I have pictured here, which I believe is this the one by Wacom? I got to make sure I get the
Yeah,
title
yeah,
of it
yeah.
right.
That's the one by
Yes.
Wacom. Yep.
Yeah, and my son steals it for things like his math class. Like he's a 16-year-old and in high school, but he's been able to use it for some of the things that he does, which I think is kind of fantastic. But almost everything in the Microsoft suite allows you to draw on it. Um, and there's a lot of great that you probably already have software that's going to allow you to kind of enable pens and start using them. So this is essentially just one of these tools that allows people to look at the thing you want them to see, and then as you're talking, it's also a good tool for taking notes around, hey, well, here's an idea, let's change this and move it over here. And so real-time editing, that's another big thing that I'm doing in my day job. We're often working with strategy and vision, and as we're trying to understand that kind of big picture vision, what is the big thing that we're trying to say, and how are we going to say it. So we think about that kind of large vision picture. The ability to take visual notes in real time allows us to leave a meeting feeling pretty confident that there is a single source of the truth here. I think everyone's been in that meeting where you've got 10 people around a table and they're all taking individual notes. And when you leave the meeting, right, all those people have their own version of what they just took, right? They've all got their own kind of interpretation of what just happened. And so having that single version, now I can turn on the color and make whatever notes I need to make here to say, all right, I'm going to change this, move that over here. That's actually the wrong three ideas that you put there, and that we're able to kind of move further faster, right? That's the key. That in the short time that we're able to spend together, we can really accelerate our results. I think I'm
Well,
at the
and
end
I
of
think
this
it's
canvas.
amazing too, because a lot of us here on the call right now, right? We all work in situations where we're asking everyone to say, consensus? Do you agree? Do you understand? Are you on the same page? And adding this really simple piece to it allows for them to be like, yeah, I do, I get it. Or to ask questions that are more thoughtful or more clarifying. And again, it is that neutralization. So in this part, before we move into kind of really becoming a level one, right? So we've talked about leaving
Yes.
PowerPoint. We've talked about making sure that it was just engaging in it. We talked about turning on your pen, right? And I saw
Yeah.
people in here who are, longtime listeners, first time callers, the Wacom devices, right? We've got Intuoses, one by Wacoms, Wacom ones, all those things. Again, guys, we'll talk more at the end about technology and the software and how that all works together. The one thing is, as you guys know, if you turn on a pen, Wacom is going to work. We've been
Mhm.
here for 40 years, right? I know, Tim, you say that too, because any software you want to use, it'll work with your Wacom. So, but now that we've gotten to this point, let's talk about becoming a level one. So, everyone on here, this is what we're really trying to do right now, understanding what visual communication is. Now we get into how do you start? What do you need to do to start?
Yeah, yeah. So this is sort of, and when we think about this level one, part of it is, I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, so I'm a little bit more up in the sort of the advanced levels, but I really want to encourage people who have a fear of drawing to know that the quality of your marks that you make has nothing to do with the effectiveness of using drawing as a method of communication. Um, the CEO of our organization is left-handed and has doctor handwriting, and it's terrible on a whiteboard, right? Poor left-handed people as they're trying to go across and they're smudging their text as they write it, and so, but he is an incredibly effective visual thinker and visual communicator, and that is because and his method. One of the things that he'll do most often is just like whatever the idea is, he'll sort of figure out what the word is that he's trying to express within an idea, put it in a bubble, and and all of a sudden he's taken, his sort of like that's, and then it's like, all right, so this bubble relates to this bubble like this, and here's sort of what we want to say here, and then here's what we're putting here, and pretty quickly, his primary method is this kind of word cloud method, but as you start to put the ideas together, all of a sudden you have a pretty good understanding of the ecosystem that he's talking about. And he's gone from just essentially just using these dots and lines in this sort of level one area to start to put them together in what we like to call a framework. Right now, this framework can contain these ideas in a way that allows us to start to understand things and talk together. And so you you just became a visual thinker because instead of just using words, you're kind of using words as these little nuggets of information.
Yeah,
Right? And sort of bringing your ideas up from you have to understand this in the course of the sentence and the paragraph and the bullet point. No, you can just pull it out and make it more or less like a sticky note. Like that's the reason that you see our design thinking, visual thinking people covering boards with sticky notes is not because they're colorful and fun. We do always recycle,
of course.
but you know, but it's because you're externalizing your thinking, right?
Yeah,
You're taking the idea out of yourself and giving it a point where now we can collaborate and think on it and talk about it.
yeah,
So these sort of first elements of level one, we kind of think about just for real time engagement, for getting people to connect around a shared idea. Using these lines and arrows and circles is pretty much what I've been doing. A lot of what we've been doing today. I've been doing a couple of drawing
yeah.
things live, but this is this is sort of like where we think about it. Want to talk about rhythm? I think rhythm's kind of an interesting concept here.
And I think it's really interesting too, is you talk a little bit too about these lines, arrows, and circles, right? They're just basic doodles, right? Real quick as we talk about rhythm too. I know people in here are like, oh, I love to doodle, I love to draw. Those are your symbols, guys. These are your little pieces of visual communication. This is your own visual alphabet, right? That will help you in it. So as you're practicing using a pen tablet or a pen display, practice those doodles, make them your symbols, right? And then I know we're going to talk about the rhythm that we use in this communication, but it's a great way to kind of have your own handwriting, right? Visual handwriting as you talk about it. So, but what do you mean by rhythm, right? Because I'm thinking like dancing while you're presenting, right? Like you have to have a good speech rhythm or what, how do we do that with visual communication?
Yeah, I think part of what we're talking about here is using the pen to connect ideas in a way that's going to draw people through your content so that your story unfolds. We'll talk a little bit more about how we organize good stories, but a lot of times what Explain is often trying to do is help people come to a visual picture that explains where they're trying to go. So a lot of that kind of visual vision that people can see and align around that image, and there's a rhythm to that image where we're often trying to think. When I'm thinking about building those kind of images, first I think about like what the most important thing. What's the thing I want them to remember? Well, I make that the thing that really stands out, and then I make sure that there's a connection to the other parts of that image, so that we're going to look over here and look at this next, and look over here and look at this next. But we're kind of taking people's eye through the things that we think are critical, and moving them along as we talk about them. So as we kind of talk about these things, and these these little images that I have here are a few of my visual library images that I've drawn so many times they just sort of like can do them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that there's and you can see with the presentation that we've put together today, I have some of my images pre-drawn. Part of that is because when I'm sharing over Zoom and drawing in real time, I don't have the same level of fidelity that I'd have if I were just working by myself. So I think that's a part of just making sure that we've got a strong presentation. But I love that concept of sort of like creating a visual rhythm as you go through your ideas, and that does kind of help draw people's eye across the content that you want them to see, and that way you're not that you're not relying on the sexy animated reveal inside the PowerPoint, right? The sort of like, oh, now it's this idea, now it's this idea, and it in some ways that can almost get to a level of distraction
Yeah.
from what you're trying to tell them, as opposed to just like say, hey, this is the thing we're going to talk about now.
Well, and I think too, the way the rhythm of even how this presentation, right? You guys are seeing it, it's sliding through the story, right? Tim is starting and he's moving you through the progression of it. And so when you come back and at the end of this, when we look at the whole thing, it's a linear drawing of how everything fits together. And I think that's a great way when you're communicating concepts or why things need to happen, or maybe if things need to stack, right? You go this way and then you go up, right? And you literally can move your screen up with your pre-drawn ideas so you can show people like, okay, this is the flow of your presentation. I think that's part of your rhythm too, right? It's just breaking it
Yeah,
down so
totally.
you're leading people in the way that you're trying to tell the story, which I think is great.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and I think that that kind of leads to that a couple of concepts that I think are important as you think about putting your visual presentations together. Um, Couple of things that like this is something mom told you, right? But it rings so true, and I think that often we forget about it. I say mom told you. I was raised by professors. My mom was a poli sci professor and international politics. But she would always, you know, anytime I'd be working on something that I was doing for school, she'd say, "All right, well, first tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them." And that concept of putting your ideas together in threes is important. Um, and so yeah, I think that's one of the like basic you know consider the shape of your presentation
Yeah.
and kind of the arc of your presentation and that you want to sort of move up, get to your big ideas, kind of got your climactic moment, and then there's the denouement, which is a French word that means like the end part.
Yeah.
But but thinking of like sort of that shape of your story as you're moving along.
Well, and I
A
think
couple
it's
of like,
yeah,
oh, go
and I
ahead.
think to that point, right, it's really important when you're talking about storytelling and you're giving a presentation, you're getting buy-in, right? Whether you're an educator and you're trying to get your students to follow a concept, whether you're giving a presentation to stakeholders at work, whether you're trying to get your team on board with something, right? This is all about buy-in, right? And so by doing this visual communication, people are getting more comfortable with an idea so that when you tell them what you told them at the end, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. There's none of this like, I'm not sure if I followed along. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You get a lot more acknowledgement and then you have documentation, right? And it's really that idea. Yeah. I think it's so cool. It's so crucial. I learned it in sixth grade speech camp. That was where I learned those three things. It wasn't my parents. My parents are artists. So I grew up doing visual communication just so my parents knew what I was talking about because we had to draw everything out on a napkin or a piece of paper. But the speech, right? I think it's a crucial piece to learn. And you've got these 4 bullet points, right, about making
Right.
sure we're setting up our content correctly. So let's dive into
Right.
this too.
And before we jump to those, I just wanted to
Yeah.
say, if there are two important takeaways here, we're pulling from our you know inner 4 year old and our sixth grade speech teacher, right? It's like we're going back to elementary school and having to kind of remember some of the things that we were taught a long time ago,
Yeah.
which I love. Um, yeah, so these are kind of four final thoughts on this level one. As you start to put ideas together, one of the things that I've tried to emphasize here is one idea per frame. So as you kind of look at each of these, I kind of consider one of the screen's views as like a frame, and so I put this together in a way that you can kind of see like as we're talking about each of these concepts, I try to keep like one primary idea per frame. In this case, it's four because it's a summary. Come on, it's all right. Once you know the rules, you're allowed to break them. Use images strategically. So that's another thing. I think that often when we're beginning to tell people how to use images effectively, what often happens is like a people go all the way to the other end where it's like I'm only using images and no words. That's probably not going to communicate the idea as well as smartly using the key images that are going to help convey the right content. So as and remember, you know, putting photographs into your presentation is a great idea. However, remember to be discerning in how you use them. There's just a lot of you don't want to get the photograph of your you know somebody going. You don't want the mugging, right? Right?
Yeah.
You don't want people kind of looking silly. So the images are very powerful, but use their power for good.
Yep.
Is the point there. The third point around contrast. So contrast is really important because that is the thing that draws your eye to the page. So I'm using sort of bright contrasty colors, partly because I want eyeballs. I want you guys to be able to enjoy what I'm presenting, but also your eye is always drawn to the greatest point of contrast on the page. So right now, your eye is going to be drawn right here because there's a very dark color with a very light color. And as you think about setting up that rhythm of your presentation, think about putting the greatest point of contrast on the thing you want people to see and focus on. And that's why if you've got all black text on a white background, it actually creates a certain element of like visual chatter as you're looking at it, as opposed to focus.
Yeah.
And so think about graying out the things that you don't think are as important, and having that one really dark black thing, bold thing, be the thing that you want people to focus on. And the last one, and we saw a few people in the comments who like
We
this.
did.
So that's the keep it simple, stupid framework, where um, often when we're working with organizations, particularly it seems like when they're trying to explain something complex, they feel the need to try to get every detail on the page. And there's like this little guy here, and they're doing this thing, and then we've got to talk about the supply chain because that's important. Then we got to figure out like there's this part and this part, and before you know it, you've created like a giant steaming pile of poo because nobody wants to look at that like really complex image, right? That
Yeah.
it's that that you've put too much on the page. And I think that one of the things that we're often kind of counseling leaders inside of organizations is let's scale this back and think about maybe a metaphor to tell this story as opposed to getting all the details on a single
Yeah.
page. And so that idea of, instead of showing a million things on one page, let's say what we're talking about is actually more like ships on the ocean, or what we're talking about is a little bit more like the metaphor of gardening, and growing the seed, or the metaphor of whatever it is. We're trying to simplify people's thinking so that they can relate to it. And what these, everyone's seen this image before, right? This sort of super complex image. What that often does is just causes us to shut down. Right? Too much information is basically just
You can't do
going
it.
to
You can't
make us
process
tune
it.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I
So,
think
so
that's
oh, go
crucial, right?
ahead.
Yeah, I think it's really crucial for, for level one, just to kind of cover what we just shared with them, right? I think those four key points are really, really important, right? And I think that as we all talk about it too, we're talking about the story and we're telling someone, if we download all the details at one time, no one knows what you're trying to get at, right? They lose interest, they're not paying attention, they pick up their phone, you've lost them. But when you keep it really simple and you highlight and you contrast and you do use images, it allows for them to stay engaged, which is hopefully what everybody's doing right now too, right? As you're following along with us. I know there's been a lot of great conversation in the chat too, which we love. Great questions, guys. Do keep them coming. We're going to open up our Q&A in about 5 minutes. So do keep those questions coming, but we really want to quickly touch on level 2 before we go into it.
Yeah.
So we've done the baseline, right? Level 1,
Yep.
and then level 2. What is a level 2?
So as people gain comfort, it's starting to use like this is beginning to kind of use our skill to add emphasis to important ideas. So if we wanted to call out idea 3 and we wanted to call out the third of the 3 light bulbs, we're starting to sort of use our marks in a smart way that essentially we're pulling a little bit from cartooning, we're pulling a little bit from data visualizations, but starting to show emphasis and starting to show connection. Now we're starting to see that, like, hey, idea 1 and idea 3 are related in this way, but idea 2, that's just sort of it's what I'm doing here is showing relationships with the way I'm drawing the lines, or from a visual standpoint, if that my path to here is uncertain, my path to here is clear, and my path to this way is kind of wacky. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but it's going to be, we're kind of showing connections in a way that is maybe taking these ideas a little bit to the next level, to kind of continue some of these thoughts, right? So now we're starting to show emphasis as well, right? That we want to say, like, this point here is really critical. Well, let's change the color because that definitely is going to be stronger to move it to
See, there's
white.
your contrast right there, right?
Yeah, I got to get the
Simple
contrast
and
right.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being able to show that, like, this one's really strong. We'll start to add some like minor decorative elements as well as we start to get a little more comfortable working this way. This is just some of these tools that I think that often people say, well, that's decorative. Well, it is, but it's also helping people remember the thing that we're talking about. So that now I can express a lot of different concepts visually just by the way I'm drawing the lines around these ideas. That if we say that, hey, idea 3 is a real banger, right? Now we've got that, that one's going to be, that kind of spiky star image that you'll see on all the packaging that says new, right? There's a reason that our eyes are drawn to that shape, because it's like fascinating when you want to look at it. We kind of do some of the same things around drawing lines around characters here. We want to sort of show how shapes are going to bring emphasis, and then shapes bringing connection, right? That we could basically say that in this diagram, now I'm going to show like some hierarchy, the ideas here, or we could even go like full Venn diagram and show that these ideas are related in different ways, but kind of showing that as we move toward from like lines to show emphasis and connection to really start to show the underlying framework between ideas. That's sort of where this is going. So a couple of like concluding thoughts on this idea. Draw to communicate. Don't worry about drawing to decorate. Simplify your drawings. One of the things we like to say when we're drawing humans is just like, hey, we're going to do Egyptian perspective, which basically just means, right, you think about the shape of a body. You've got shoulders that I'm showing both sides of. The arms are going forward. The legs are coming down. But this is like a nice way to kind of simplify the view of the people that we're looking at. Be selective, we talked about last time, and that, hey, words are okay. If we're trying to explain the concept, the word is going to help us understand the concept, right? So that if I put something in their hand and then put this sort of R2D2 shaped thing next to it, it doesn't make sense until I put the word mail on that. And now I know that they're putting a letter in the mailbox, and it's not a trash can. So that's one of the ways that we improve it.
Yeah. And I
A
think
few of you have probably seen this before, but maybe I'll run through it really quick.
yeah, and I think it's great. I think this is kind of our last point, guys. So we're going to open to Q&A here. Tim's gone over level 1 and level 2. This is the piece everybody's asking. How do you get started? How do you practice? What do I need to do to start being a visual communicator? And I think this is the money slide. So pay attention right now, guys. Tim's going to show you the really, really basics of visual alphabet. So Tim, I'll let you dive into what is a visual alphabet.
Yeah, so this was something our founder spent a great deal of time working on, because he saw leaders at organizations wanting to kind of up their whiteboard skills and up their ability to communicate visually, and he saw that there was really a hesitancy to start using drawing as a means to communicate, and so where the kind of genius that he had was, well, I've been to art school, I've done all this stuff, but I actually want to be able to jump past what you'd learned there and quickly give people a basic vocabulary. You think about learning this the same way that you might learn a language. Well, start with the alphabet of the vocabulary. And really, these first 3 images here, the point, the line, and the arc, you can draw anything with that. That all the rest of them are comprised of these three little elements. And in the same way that we put these weird glyphs together, and then when we look at them, they make a word, that's basically what I'm suggesting that we do as we think about like the way that we approach drawing. Put these glyphs together in different ways. If I take, that arc shape and then put a line on top of it, and another line on the edge, and then another line right here, create a coffee, right? And so I'm quickly able to sort of put these ideas together. Let's take a few others. Like if I take that cloud shape, right, with a line, and I'll put the angle there. Now I've created a tree. Let's create a different kind of tree. Well, let's do the triangle, right? I'm in the Northwest where we have a lot of wonderful like conifer trees. So there's another tree. Another simple way to draw the concept of tree is just the circle, the angle, and the line. I've taken 3 of the elements and put them together to make a compelling shape. My favorite one as we kind of jump to Q&A is let's draw a cat. So I'm going to draw my spiral shape, and I'm going to put a little angle and an angle, and there's the cozy cat all curled up.
Easy one.
So this is just combining these shapes in ways I feel like it's less intimidating. I think people often are like, oh, I only draw stick figures, I don't know how to draw. Don't worry about knowing how to draw. Just combine a couple shapes the same way you do when you write your name. That skill is already there. So hopefully that's a good primer on where we're going, and now I'm happy. We've had such good discussions in the QA. Like we've had like I think you could publish a paper from some of these really great. I mean, I've I've seen paragraph long responses, so I'm really grateful that we've had such good discussion here.
Yeah. Oh, and you guys, everyone on, you guys are part of this Wacom community. That's truly amazing. To Tim's point, we love that you're chatting with each other. We love that you've come from all over the world to be here with us. So thank you. We've got about 10 minutes left. Everyone, if you haven't entered to a question yet, in the Q&A panel, not the chat panel, but in the Q&A channel, go ahead and enter your question. Everyone who asks a question will be eligible to enter a free product. We'll announce that in 2 days. This recording, it will be sent out in 2 days. All of the slides will be not like a slide with a whole presentation recording. We'll have these slides on it. There might be a couple of snippets. We'll see if we can get visual alphabet and stuff like that added to it. There will be a white paper coming that has some tips and tricks. There's a lot of content after this. So a couple questions, I think, Tim, that you and I have talked about before, but it's a great question, is do I create a couple images that are mine? Do I template it? How do I get started in changing how I'm doing visual communication and make it so that I feel comfortable with it quickly?
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable question. I think that one of the things I had to do when I started working this way was unlearn some of the fine art things that I'd learned about how I draw. Right? I was one of those like pretentious people. I would measure with my thumb as I'm looking at the looking at the design to sort of get all the angles right, and I kind of had this messy line quality because I was I was an artiste, right? And one of the things that I did was realize that oftentimes when I'm I might be the graphic recorder for a meeting, I need to get those ideas really quickly, and so I need to one of the things I had to do is really quickly draw the concept of an idea, and so the question is where you start. I think one of the places that you really start is think about the things that are critical to you and your job and the things that you work with all the time. And so if you're somebody who works with data a lot, right? How do you represent the concept of data? And we've had a lot of fun, like deep discussions around data can look like ones and zeros. Data can look like a box of dots. Data can look like a lot of different, data can look like squiggly lines to which other squiggly lines are joining into. But I think you start to do some of these tests, and one of the great things about this is as you start to come up with these visual tools, you'll find that people really enjoy talking with you about them. So as you start to come up with your kind of visual library of items that you draw all the time, you start to say, all right, well, we have a lot of documents. So what's the quickest way to draw the concept of a document? Show that to people and say, hey, what do you think of this? Is there a better way to draw that? And that they'll generally get better. If you're just brand new and intimidated by even trying to use a pencil or a pen, I would recommend looking at the Noun Project. And I believe it's just the nounproject.com.
Yep. Yeah, they're great.
And it's just a great resource for finding images to associate with ideas. And like the title, if you go there, you'll quickly just be able to enter any word that you want. Explainers have submitted some of the graphics that you'll see there. I don't have a stake in it, but I'm just saying that's a nice tool to be able to kind of like get some quick ideas around how you might visualize some things and it'll generally give you like a lot of ideas per thought, right? It'll show you a lot of concepts for each word that you put in.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to do it. And I think one of the other questions that it's been a lot looking at right now is just the software hardware, right? So one of the things that the beauty of using Wacom, right? We've been around 40 years. Every inking software, every software that has inking in it has the Wacom API. We are the API that's in there. So if you can use a one by Wacom, which is our smallest one, that's what we see in schools across the world. You can use Intuos and Intuos Pro, a Cintiq Pro, a Wacom One. Any of those you guys can use with visual communication. We will be sending out a link at the end so you guys can purchase those. We also have, if you've got questions around what would be best for you or your organization, I've got folks on the call here who can answer those questions. There'll be folks who you can reach out to afterwards so we can set up a call to talk about it a little bit more. You bring Tim in about kind of what some of your goals are. We can help you figure that out. And then on the software side, you're using Adobe Illustrator, there is Canva, there is Sketchbook, there's Corel, there's Magma, there's Sketch.io, there's Miro, there's Zoom, there's PowerPoint. I mean, there's so many options. And Tim, I always kind of say, start where you're comfortable, right? Don't try to learn a new software. Just turn ink on. I think that's the thing that you said, right? Just turn ink
Yeah.
on and start practicing.
Yeah. And in fact, like the shared document, the Word doc that we use to outline what we're talking about today. What's funny is it looks like a Word doc, except there's doodles and scribbles on top of it with ink that just that will yeah, and so you look at it and I feel like there's it's just
Yeah,
a less threatening, right? That by seeing, you know, that like the little notes here where it's like,
yeah,
hey, there's content, there's, you know, that we're kind of breaking up our presentation. That second level of just doodling on top of it makes it so much clearer for me.
yeah,
Like it really is that's yeah,
yeah.
that's a nice way to do it.
It is.
I'll also recommend if you want to get into some of the like normal, like real world sketching and that kind of work. If I'm doing, sometimes I'll do graphic recording live in a conference. I do like the Posca markers as like a, they're not for whiteboarding. They're just for paper. You'll never get them off the whiteboard. But they're like an opaque version of your Sharpie. I love Sharpies as well. Just having, you know, like for almost anything that I do, I've always got like a black Sharpie if you're talking like just analog. But yeah, and my setup here, I am using a Wacom Cintiq, so I'm drawing on the screen. I I'm equally comfortable with tablets. Anytime that I need to be mobile, I'll bring the tablet with me because
Yeah.
that's
The
definitely um,
yeah, the Intuos Pro Small
it's
is
still a
our,
natural mapping.
yeah, a road warrior, right? And that's one of the things too. Like our Intuos Pro Small throws in a bag. It handles the 16 Pro that you're on, throws in a laptop bag. It can travel with you. There's a lot to it. Um, Guys, I just want to make sure you know we are going to be doing another series with Tim. We're going to dive deeper. We're going to take all the questions that you guys had that we may not have gotten to today. We're going to put it into our level 200 of visual communication. A recording of this is going to be sent out. And truly, thank you all for being here. Thank you for those who woke up at crazy hours to join us today from all over the world. It is such a pleasure to have you and be part of our Wacom community. We love just having you be a part of this. Again, a recording will be sent out, a white paper will be sent out, the winner of our drawing will be sent out, and some promotional codes so you guys can purchase your Wacom device at a discount, pretty deep discount, I would say, will be coming your way so you can be a part of it. Again, if you guys have questions, please do. And one other thing, Tim, also really quick, before everybody drops off, is that if you guys are practicing your visual communications, tag Tim and Wacom on Instagram as you guys do it. Share what you're doing. Let us see it. Let us know where you're at. We'd love to see what's happening, guys. We would love to see you trying your drawings, all of that kind of stuff. So Tim's putting his hashtag in here, his handle on it, Fresh Beast. Okay, there we go. That is his Instagram handle. You've got Wacom's handle. Show us what you're doing. We're going to highlight some of those at our next Wacom and Tim May webinar. You guys will see that. So please share with us. We'll have that in the email again. We'll put those tags in there. But we are at time. So thank you all so much. Tim, thank you so much for being here. I love working with you. It's just a blast. So
Oh, wait, before we close, I can't leave without sharing the most important part, which was my sketch of Lindsay. There we go.
I'm going to walk into my background. That's a good one. All eyes and curly hair. I love it.
All right.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it all. And we will chat with you later. Bye, gang.